Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be starting in a minute or so. We're just waiting for people to join. I think we can start. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Andrea Nicodemu from the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. And today we have a webinar to showcase information about the governance sector. So thank you for joining us. And here's the agenda. So first we'll have a keynote speech by Jaro Misiak. Then we'll go on to climate in Emilia-Romagna. And we have two representatives, Valentina Pavan and Cinzia Alessandrini. And then we will explore the aspect governance case study and show you what we have been working on in the project. And Simone Tadeo will present this. And then we'll deep dive into the data with some more information about extreme rainfall and heat waves by Yishi Wang. So the first speaker is Jaro Misiak. Please, Jaro, go ahead. He will give us an introduction on climate change and the governance sector.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you very much, Andrea, for the nice presentation. So I will try to put you on the track what we are trying to do. I would like to share my screen. I see I cannot do that now. It's possible. Perfect. So I will be talking about why we need climate forecast, what kind of climate information we need in order to inform climate adaptation, and how to design the systems in order to be able to deliver. Just very quickly, can you confirm that you see my slide in full presentation mode?
Yes, we can see it now. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So you might know that we have a European adaptation strategy that is trying to encourage a faster and more systemic adaptation to a likely impact of the climate change. It was adopted in 2021, already 5 years ago. And we have a number of other research and innovation branches and the initiatives that are trying to serve the same purpose. And the first one is the mission adaptation. Mission adaptation is in principle a innovation branch of mission strategy, adaptation strategy of the European Union. And the mission adaptation is a part of the Horizon Europe program. And it's the first program where the regional and local authorities are working side by side with the research innovators, with RTD entities, in order to develop knowledge that is useful for climate adaptation. So if you are not familiar with mission adaptation, you can find more information on the Commission website. I think this slide will be shared with you. The links are underpinned on every slide. And one very important part of the mission adaptation was signing the Charter of Mission, that is an intent to do and to advance the adaptation based on the information collected. And you can see that many of the local and regional authorities have joined this mission and by signing the charter. So that's a huge advancement. So mission adaptation has invested almost €1 billion in making the knowledge actionable at the local and regional level, and also connect that with the national and European level. In order to show you what kind of information is needed for climate adaptation, I will make example from the Pathways to Resilience project. So out of the 70 projects funded so far by the mission adaptation, there are some that are key because they are horizontally covering all the certain topics across whole Europe. And one of those is the Pathways to Resilience. Pathways to Resilience is developing a framework how the climate adaptation should be planned and should be understood and how it should advance. And there are other projects that are helping and initiatives helping to connect the monitoring and progress reporting framework or the climate risk assessment that I will refer a little bit later. So I'm making a advertising for this project because it has interesting stuff. But I did that on the purpose to show you what kind of information is needed in order to make the climate adaptation. So you will find more information about the pathways to resilience on this website. It's a project that will run until the end of 27, and it has developed a very interesting resilience regional journey. And this regional resilience journey is quite interesting. It has a number of components, and I will focus only on the first part of it. The first three stages, from preparing the ground, building a shared vision, and designing the pathways, the adaptation pathways. So in the first phase, as you can see, is what we're looking into is establishing a baseline. What might happen if we don't do anything on climate adaptation, or if we do indeed implement a adaptation that is forward-looking, that would be an alternative pathway. So establishing a baseline, understanding a system, mapping the relevant vulnerabilities and the risk that are contributing to putting them in danger, assessing the risk and vulnerabilities from the sectoral point of view, from hazard point of view, but also from the systemic point of view. So how sure, what is the water security in the region? What is the food security? How sure are we that our social infrastructure is well protected and we take care of those that are most vulnerable in the region? So this is typically the first step that you realize. And for this, you need a lot of climate information. You need climate profiling. You need a revision of the past extreme events and the way how they impacted your regions and so on. And you also need to understand what kind of risk you are trying to adapt to. In the second stage, you are building a shared vision. That means you are sort of envisaging the future that you would like to implement in your jurisdiction. And this is setting the priorities, establishing a shared goal of what kind of resilience I want to build, to what extent I'm going to guarantee the protection of my population and my businesses, what kind of environment I want to create for my businesses in the territory and so on. So this is very important to realize that climate adaptation is a strategic view into the future. So we are looking into a way how the risk might impair with our vision and with our expectation from the future, and and we are also setting our own priorities where we can go, and to an extent we can reduce those risks. And the third step, this is equally important, is you start designing a pathways, how to adapt, what kind of options do I have to adapt, how long those options will take in order to be implemented, how long they will stay effective, and how long I will need, what else I need to do in order to prepare the ground and make the adaptation work. So it's quite complex and strategic undertaking, planning for adaptation. And the type of climate risk information that you need for that means again in identifying the possible disruptions and linking your disruption to the way you can what you can do in order to prevent them or reduce the impact. And here is the second initiatives that we are working closely also in aspect in order to underpin this process of climate adaptation. We really need to equip the regions and local and communities with instruments to screen, explore the risk, and to design those options. And for this, the project, which is Climax, again, it's available on the website, has developed a number of very useful information and also open access, open source toolbox tools that you can employ in your environment, and you can easily change and adapt in order to match your requirements. So there are a number of workflows that you can change. They are really implemented in a operational environment hosted by ECMWF, but you can also download the whole Jupyter notebook. This is the environment in which they work, and you can change the code, and the code will lead you through the analysis and will enable you to change the way how you are feeding the information into that analysis. It might seem a little bit technical, but it's not, because you are advised and you are supported, assisted by our colleagues throughout the process. You can ask questions. You can also ask for technical assistance in order to set up this workflow for you and so on. Aspect in this sense is trying to feed into the toolbox, but also develop application examples where we showcase the value of seasonal or decadal forecast. Basically, we are looking into predictions, which are complementing the projections, the prediction that are able to start with initially climate simulation and showcase what might happen as next in your region. And that might inform your strategic decision making and decision planning. Now we will go into more in the coming years. The toolbox and the workflow that we have developed as an open source, open access will become much more intuitive. They will be complemented by AI. And they will be also complemented by a citizen's journey, a story map, storyboard that showcase, okay, because I have invested in this way of understanding my climate risk, explore the risk, how they impact the life of my citizens and colleagues and people living in my jurisdiction. I can engage them in the process of designing the adaptation, and I can also explain exactly why it's important to adapt. And this is the core element that we want to showcase during this web tool, to showcase, right? So the climate information has an enormous value. It mobilized the action, it mobilized the awareness, and the climate prediction, in addition to the projection, is also able to provide you with a tailored and more targeted information that you need for this strategic advice. I will stop here in order not to steal too much time from my colleagues. They have developed a very interesting overview about what we are doing, with the information from Aspect on the climate predictions and injected into local and regional planning. So you will hear much more detail from what I started to explain in my overview. And with that, I hand over to you. Thank you very much, Andrea.
Thank you very much, Yaro, for these interesting insights and for showcasing these different initiatives. And then we'll go into the first speaker of the day. It's Valentina Pavan from ARPE, from the Emilia-Romagna region. So Valentina will give us some insights on the trends and variability experienced in the region. So Valentina, please, the floor is yours.
Yes.
And, also to remind everyone, if you have any questions for Valentina or any of our speakers, please add them in the questions and answers box. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Hello. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see full screen. Thank
Great.
you.
First of all, thank you very much for choosing Emilia-Romagna as one of the region on which you will apply the tools that are going to be developed within the Aspect project. Emilia-Romagna is a region of northern Italy, which is inside the larger Mediterranean region. We have mountains on the south, plain on the northeast. The Po River is flowing along the border in the north, and in the east we have the Adriatic Sea. As Mediterranean is an hotspot for climate change, we expect the climate impacts, the climate change is particularly strong in Emilia-Romagna. Here we see the time series of mean annual temperature in Emilia-Romagna in red, compared with that of Italy and the average over the global continents as computed by CRU. And you can see that the increase in mean temperatures in 1961 is stronger in Emilia-Romagna than over the globe, as expected. And in particular, in Emilia-Romagna, the increase in maximum temperature is particularly strong. It's twice the speed of increase of maximum temperature is twice as much that of minimum daily temperature. Given these changes, we expect also that the frequency of specific events changes in time. Here we see, for example, how the number of frost days changed since 1961. The frost days are those in which minimum temperature is smaller than 0 degrees centigrade. So they have decreased all the way to the present. On the other hand, the tropical nights, which are those in which minimum temperature is greater than 20 degrees, have increased. In the first 30 years, there were hardly any, while now every year we have 10 to 20 tropical nights in Emilia-Romagna. Finally, the number of hot days, which are those in which maximum temperature is greater than 30 degrees, are increasing significantly. In particular, if you focus on the plain, if you remember our region, the plain are in the northeastern part of the region, and it's the place where most people are living. We may compute the maximum temperature averaged over the plains and compute the number of days in which this index is greater than 30 or 35 degrees. You can see that both these indices have increased. The orange one is number of days in which maximum temperature is greater than 30 degrees. It has increased at the beginning of this time series. We had basically 1 month of hot days. Now we have more than 2 months, sometimes 3. And the number of days in which maximum temperature is greater than 35 degrees, which is an even higher threshold. Originally it was 0. Now every year we have 10 to 15 days. Now shift to precipitation. This is the regional average of total annual precipitation. As you can see, there is a large interannual variability, but no real trend. But precipitation has a strong seasonality. In particular, in summer is very low. And if we compute the trends from 1961 to 2025 for seasonal precipitation, we see that in summer the precipitation is decreasing with a high rate, and all the decrease is almost everywhere significant. Another thing that we can notice, going back to this plot, is that in the last 10 to 15 years, we had an increase in the variability of the total annual precipitation, with the occurrence of quite a few drought events, very strong and persistent, but also in some years, just after this drought event, we had very abundant precipitation. In fact, one of the most important drought that we had was the one from 2021 to 2023, where here we can see the SPI computed over 24 months. Over north central Italy in March 2023, and you can see that in a large portion of the area the SPI was smaller than -2. And during the following summer, the Po River at Ponte Lago Scuro, which is the last section of the Po before going to the sea, it reached the absolute minimum of daily discharge over the last 100 years. And the impacts of drought are exacerbated by high temperatures, because high temperature had to increase evapotranspiration from the trees and from the land, making the soil even drier, and so making the effect of drought even stronger. So here we see in blue the hydroclimatic balance, which is the difference between precipitation and reference evapotranspiration, which is becoming more and more negative. With respect to extreme precipitation, in the last 3 years, we had quite a few very extreme, very intense event. The first one was in May 2023. Here you see the total precipitation that was measured during the month of May during these two events. And the map of the impacts with the flooded areas and breaches along the rivers, while the estimated return period at the time was about 1,000 years. In the next year, other events similar to this one, also not as intense, were observed in September and October. Here we see a map of precipitation. In this occasion, some of the precipitation was reached also very high intensities, hourly intensities. So we can say that Emilia-Romagna presents very significant trends, climate trends, and also climate presents a very strong interannual variability. Trends are present especially in temperature, especially maximum temperature, but annual precipitation present decreasing trends in summer, which is the dry season, and enhanced interannual variability in the last decades.
That's great. Thank you, Valentina, for giving us these insights in the trends and the extreme events in Emilia-Romagna. And I wanted to ask you, you mentioned already some events, some extreme events such as a drought and in 2021 to 2023, and some extreme precipitation events. Is there any particular event that had the most impact in the last years?
Yeah, definitely the flood of May 2023, and then those in the subsequent year were those who impacted, which impacted most our region. And although they are not, they are expected to be very rare events, we have seen others coming back. So this is really worrisome for the region.
And what kind of impacts did you observe, if you have any information in general?
Yeah, of course, there was, as you have seen from the map, a large portion of the plain was flooded. So many people were displaced. There were loss because this part of the region is very productive, both in agriculture and in other activities. So it was loss, a great economic loss also, and 17 deaths.
Okay, thank you.
It was not possible to avoid them.
Yeah. Hopefully in the future we'll have climate information to be able to prepare well for such events.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for this information.
Yeah.
And then let's go to our next speaker, who is Cinzia Alessandrini. and is also from ARPE, and will give us an overview of adaptation to climate change in the Emilia-Romagna region.
Okay, good
We can see
morning,
your
good
screen.
afternoon. Okay, thank you very much. So I put this one down. As already the colleagues mentioned before, I was invited to speak about adaptation in Emilia-Romagna region. So my colleague Valentina already presented the climate, okay, in Emilia-Romagna region. And with my speech, I would like to try to discuss with you how we use the climate information and in order to improve and to enhance the governance system. Okay. Oh, sorry. So, for example, the first service, the first place where we use the climatic data is the monitoring for drought. You know that in Emilia-Romagna region is a very high problem, the drought. And so with this kind of service, with this monitoring, daily monitoring, we try to inform citizens and the local governments, so the municipalities or the regional government, for which is the situation in a particular moment. We divided our region in 8 macro areas, and this is an example. I put the region, and there is the arrow that indicates the graph. Also, the colors have a meaning that is connected to the percentiles. So the part of the region that is in green means that the precipitation are in the mean. Okay, what we expect to have from the 1st of October till now. But in the orange areas, for example, we are lower than the 25th percentile. With the black line, you can see the total precipitation amount from the 1st of October till now, compared with the climate percentile. So with this service, we can monitor the precipitation and either the hydroclimatic balance, so the other indicator that Valentina already showed before, and again, the river discharge. So the dots are some places where we monitor the discharge in our rivers, and either here the colors are explains if the discharge is high or low. Of course, the red is a low discharge, while the blue dot is a mean discharge. So in the central part of the region, at present moment, we have no problems of discharge, but for example, in the western part, we have already some problems. So this could be one of the service that is built upon observed data and real-time data, of course. Another service that we use is the e-called climate service that is built using satellite data in order to have an early crop map before the irrigation season, and to inform the land reclamation boards, the reclamation consortia, of which could be the anomaly of irrigation needs in the summer period, and how we produce this information and this data for the land reclamation boards. As you can see in this timeline, during the first period in autumn, we start taking 3 windows of satellite images of our plain, of course, the irrigated plain and the cultivated plain. So in October, November, the first window, in February, March, the second one, and in April, the third. With these windows validated with field surveys, that is very, very important because we don't trust only in what we can see from images, but we go in the fields, of course, not in everyone, but doing some samples, we try to validate our data, and we produce the early crop map. This is, for example, the one for this year, the 2026 early crop map. Then my colleague Valentina, so you know her, she produces every month the seasonal forecasts, in particular the JJA, so June, July, and August, in which yes, we have the seasonal forecast for the 3 months ahead, and using these 2 levels of information, so the seasonal forecasts and the crop map data, we, of course, the observed data either, we use the hydrobalance model in ARPAE, that is criteria, in which we elaborate all this data in order to produce the irrigation needs, so an anomaly of irrigation need. And this information is very, very important for the land reclamation boards because they know in advance, usually at the end of May, which will be the season, the summer season, and how many water is needed in the fields, because they know in macro classes which are the crops in the fields. So we know that this service is very, very appreciated, and it works quite well. We every year after the irrigation season, we validate the service using observed data, and the performance is quite well. Another place where we put our climatic information and climatic data is the regional adaptation strategy. So how can we use this climatic information for the adaptation in Emilia-Romagna region? In this moment, in this year in particular, we are involved in the updating of the regional adaptation and mitigation strategy. In particular, the adaptation part, in which we are updating the climate information, the observed climate information, and the climate projections for the 30 years ahead using the new scenarios. We are using, there is a colleague of us that is doing this part, and she uses the statistical downscaling as a method to downscale this climate projection for the 30 years ahead. And we are adding a new part in this adaptation strategy, that is the climate risk assessment, using the evaluation and assessment of the climate risk based and the updated scenarios. All the adaptation strategies and climate risk assessment will go in the regional adaptation plan. So this year we are working on the strategy and on the climate risk assessment. And in 2027, not only ARPAE, of course, because it's a work group, we will collaborate to do the regional adaptation plan, adaptation and mitigation plan. And why the regional adaptation strategy is so important. So how we can commute the climate science into the regional policy. Of course, we need something that is transitioning because, of course, public policies from emergency disaster response to long-term proactive agricultural resilience, but not only agricultural, okay, water resilience, health resilience, of course. And then we can have some other measures or actions like water saving protocols or optimize cultivation. And the pyramid that you can see in the lower right, I'm sorry, is in Italian, but I can explain, is something that we are doing in another European project that is called Transcend, that try to address the transformative adaptation and not only the adaptation, okay? So it means that from the basis that is the reactive adaptation. So, for example, there is a flood and I run away, or there is a heat wave and I go to the hospital, okay? This is something reactive. I react to a stress. We are trying to insert in this adaptation strategy or in the future adaptation plan something that is more complex, but that consider something that is transformative. So where you can consider something changed in our perception, our behavior. Okay, and the transformation is either for the territory, then for people, behavior, acceptance, and only in this way, with a socioeconomic transformation, we can reach this sort of adaptation that is more complex, but of course it means to ensure more resilience to the system. And about the
yes, we're running a bit behind time, so if you can please wrap up. Thank you.
Yes, just this one is the last one. So we are doing the climate risk assessment, as I told you before. The slide, the images for floods. Already Valentina showed you the flooded areas in 2023. And another problem we face is drought. So, for example, the upper image is in the Po River and the lower image is the salt intrusion in Po River Delta. And another problem is for health. So you can see the vectors for example, chikungunya or West Nile, or in the lower part, the land surface temperature taken by satellite images. And we are trying to assess this kind of risks using the Climax toolbox. Okay, so the future development, of course, is try to have high-res downscaling, so integrating the high-resolution tools, such as statistical downscaling and convective permitting climate models, try to explore aspects, decadal forecast for winter rainfall, participatory co-design, so co-designing with local actors and stakeholders, and of course the scaling up to the Mediterranean or other European regions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cinzia. So as we saw, you already do produce and use some climate information. So now we'll go to the next presentation, which will be Simone Taddeo, who will explain to us how in aspect we work together with the Emilia-Romagna region and present the case study that we have been developing.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Hello, everyone. I'm Simone Taddeo. I'm trying to be like really concise with this presentation. So today I will present the aspect governance case studies. In particular, I will focus on how climate information has been developed together with institutional users in Emilia-Romagna. So with a specific focus on ARPA, the organization that Valentin and Cinzia are part of. So the main idea here is of this presentation is that the climate information is not useful only because it is scientifically advanced. Of course, scientific quality is essential, but for climate information to support real decision, it also has to be credible, accessible, understandable, and aligned with the needs of the institution that will use it. So in this case, in this context is extremely important in governance sector because public authorities do not use climate information in an abstract way, but they need it to support some decision making, like for example adaptation planning, climate risk assessment, infrastructure management, water management, and like some risk connected to public health and emergency preparedness. So this slide really underlines why governance needs climate information. So that's really important for regional and local authorities. The use of climate information, since they are like increasingly expected to make decision under changing climate conditions. So they need like to understand not only what is happening now, but also what maybe happen like in the coming years, also like decades. As we can see, and I'll say like Cinzia, Valentina already explained, in Emilia-Romagna, there are like two particular climate risks that are relevant, and then we take from this case study. So the first one is urban heat, especially in Bologna. So urban heat, as we have seen, is not like simply about high temperature, but it's also how heat behaves in a dense urban environments. The other one, the other like second major risk is the extreme rainfall. So Emilia-Romagna is exposed to intense precipitation events that can generate like in turn, for example, like floods, urban draining problems, river overflows, and so on. So on the next slide, we can see like the real meaning of the aspect project and the use of seamless climate information, especially for the governance case study. So by seamless, we simply mean climate information that connects with different time horizons. So from seasonal prediction to multi-annual and decadal prediction, and then to long-term climate projection. So this is really important, a time frame for governance, because public decisions operate across multiple time scales. So some decision, for example, can be like short-term or operational. So maybe authorities needs to prepare for a season with higher heat risk, or other, for example, decision may be medium-term oriented. For example, as like a regional agency, for example, may need to update risk assessment and in order to support adaptation plans. Others instead like are long-term and can be like really strategic. So these may include, for example, infrastructure planning, urban development, land use planning. So all the strategies that may be relevant for decades. So this why aspect is really useful as a European project. Why like the governance case studies like really improving this climate prediction system in the governance case study, because this means like asking how climate prediction and projection can support strategic climate risk assessment in Emilia-Romagna. So it means that like understanding which information is relevant for users, for example, such as like ARPA, which variables, which indicators, which spatial resolution which temporal horizon and which delivery format are really needed in order to produce like really climate data that are robust, relevant, and usable for governance. So here, like we have seen the role of the regional agency for prevention, environment, and energy over Emilia-Romagna. And this is really a special, nice user partner, because like ARPA here like play really in a different situation, because ARPA has already technical expertise and already works with the climate data, climate services. So this changes also like the nature of co-production. So for example, ARPA can provide feedback on very technical aspects, for example, data formats, indicators, and the relevance of outputs for institutional workflow. This is really important. At the same time, in parallel, like also ARPA brings knowledge that climate scientists cannot fully, let's say, have from outside, just like knowledge of the territory, knowledge of the regional planning process, knowledge of institutional responsibilities, and so on. So ARPA's role in this case study was not absolutely passive, but did really help us like to understand, like through this case study, identifying really relevant climate risk, decision context, and adaptation priorities for Emilia-Romagna. On the next slides, I just want to mention how the co-production was taken in place with the ARPA. So the aim was like to understand like whether the existing climate service of ARPA, which kind of information could be extended, improved, or complemented. So the logic was not like that scientists produce a finished product, but and then like the user applies it, but the logic was like more iterative. So we engage with the ARPA through different kind of steps that include the user needs, scientific outputs, and then we refined with the ARPA in se, and then we also like decided together like the channel where like the information should have been delivered, and then we have like the final feedback. So the value of co-production could emerge. Indeed, from this experience, scientists learned what kind of information is relevant for decision making, and then users gain access to new methods and outputs that may improve the existing climate services. So in the next slide, we can see, for example, how the co-production process was put in place, so like the translation from broad climate risks to specific indicators. So this part was really important because sometimes the climate risks were just only discussed in general terms, but the governance users, the question is like more practical. So what exactly should be measured, which aspect of the hazard matters, which indicator can support a decision. So we focus on some like indicators, decision context related to the urban heat and extreme rainfall, that they were like the main two major climate concern in Emilia-Romagna. And then like the objective was like to move from a generic climate signal to information that really can support specific decisions. So this was like one of the most contribution of the co-production. So that was like the help transform climate data into indicators that have like really some meaning information for users. I would like to conclude with the three components that shape these governance case studies. The first one that we will see is like about high resolution convecting permitting climate modeling led by SMHI and the University of Zagreb. And then like our colleague Ichi will explain it like in detail. The second part was like the statistical downscaling of dynamic model prediction to regional planning scales. So it's like an argument that Cinzia already like mentioned. This was like really important as and central for our case studies. And the last one, the third component, is like the application of climate projection in hydrological models. So this component is important because like climate hazards are not the same as impacts. So heavily rainfall became like really a governance problem when it affects hydrological system, causes like, for example, runoff or contributes like to flooding. So on the next slide, we will see just some kind of outputs that like we have been like built up in terms of like data set synthesis, documentation, access. These are like including kind of like data set that will be like made public through like the work that we are doing in Aspect, and that are really usable and usable for like external users that want like more information about the Emilia-Romagna major climate risks. Just to conclude, these were like just take-home messages that was like really arised from our production. So these are like the main message that we want to like to highlight. Before leaving, just I want to take just one other minute just to have like a bit like of marketing part, since like we are also developing a survey about like the governance case study that could help in turn some other like governance bodies, either regional, either like provincial bodies that help like the value assessment of work that we have done in Aspect, and we want like really to check if it's possible to let's say like scale up beyond like the specific collaboration that we have with ARPA. You can see it in the chat. This is really important because, as I said before, ARPA is highly technical institutional user with strongly modeling expertise, but then we want to also like to understand if other governance regional bodies could find this kind of survey and this kind of like methods and components useful for their decision-making process. Thank you very much. And now we will see in detail in one of component led by SMHI by Ichi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simone. And I would like to encourage anyone who works in the governance sector to take part in the survey that you mentioned. You can find the link in the chat. It's about the climate information we produce in the project. So next, Yishi will deep dive into the data and different indicators developed in the project. So Yishi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrea. Let me share my screen here. No.
We can see it in full screen. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ichi Wen from SMHI and the University of Zagreb. And today I would like to share our research in developing a dynamical downscaling framework to provide the high resolution climate information of the extreme events, especially extreme rainfall and heat wave in Emilia-Romagna region. And this is a collaborative work as our teams listed here. Okay. To provide climate information and the projected changes of climate, the traditional climate simulations are very useful to
project the future changes of climate mean state. However, it is usually provide very limited information about the extreme events due to the limited sampling. To address this challenge, here we adopt a novel approach called event-based downscaling, which we focus really on the selective events of the stakeholders' interests instead of simulating the long-term climate records and climate evolutions. So with this event conditions focus, we can provide a climate information dataset that is complementary to the full climatology climate simulations, as well as being very computational efficient. So as Simone just mentioned, through the discussion with the APARI, we identified the two extreme events, the extreme rainfall events that Valentina just mentioned that related to many flood risk in the regions, as well as the urban heat wave event, which usually has a temperature maximum larger than 35 degrees, causing many health issues. And the nighttime warming during the heat wave also causing mortality because people are difficult to recover from the daytime warmth. So to simulate these events, we use regional climate model system in SMHI called Harmony Climate HClean. It is a very flexible regional modeling system which can downscale to convective permitting resolutions smaller than 10 kilometers, and it could provide very realistic in rainfall and heat wave features. So here we use a setup of two nested domain from 12-kilometer outer domain into a 3-kilometer inner domain with Emilia-Romagna in the middle. And the event-based downscaling pipeline is like this. So first, we will detect the event from the close resolution dataset, usually is from global climate models. And then we will downscale these selected events with HClean from the closer almost 100-kilometer resolution to 3-kilometer resolutions. So in order to address the multi-annual, multi-decadal prediction horizon, we choose a GCN in-house called SMHI large ensemble, and to apply the event-based downscaling to the historical scenario, which is around 2000, and the mid-century scenario, which is around 2014. And then we can compare these two scenarios to quantify the changes of intensity characteristics and the frequencies of the events. So here is an example of the event-based downscaling with extreme rainfall events. You can see that after the downscaling, we can get a more realistic rainfall intensity and the distribution. In the meantime, we also develop an ensemble utility, which allows us to provide the convective scale uncertainty of these events with a slightly perturbed initial conditions. In this way, we can give a more probabilistic information of extreme event for the user like hydrologists to better have to better predict this better describe the extreme rainfall events. And as a result, we propose a two-tier event catalog of the extreme rainfall event, which will become the upcoming deliverables in January D3.3. So in this catalog, we will provide two scenarios of the extreme rainfall data set with two tiers. The first tier will focus on around few intense events with deep ensembles, so quantifying the convective scale variabilities for these very intense events. The second tier will be some ensemble of 100 events which provide more robust statistics across the regions. So in terms of the heat wave, we actually able to develop a heat wave specific development for the Emilia-Romagna region. As we, in our research, we actually find there's a model bias in soil moisture, which needs to have special restoration in order to alleviate the model bias. And however, with the development, you can see here that H-Clean, our system is able to simulate the heat wave at temperature as well as the nighttime temperatures over this heat wave event in August 2017 very well, especially with this urban heat island showing over along this Emilia night, which gives us some confidence in providing the climate information of the heat waves. So in the deliverables, we will also provide an event catalog with a week-long heat wave events with maximum temperature larger than 35 degrees over the urban regions. There were also two scenarios, and for each event, we will provide both daytime features, including the intensity, duration, and the spatial extent of the daytime heat, as well as the nighttime features about how the nighttime temperature, especially for those passing 20 degree and 25 degree during the night, and to show how this reduced cooling and accumulated heat trace over the regions. So here I will leave with three key messages. The first is we have developed a very flexible event-based framework, which is actually adaptable to different events, different regions, and different applications. And here we showed how the extreme rainfall and heat wave in Emilia-Romagna regions with specific event development for the regions. The second, we are really grateful with the co-development process with APARI, especially Valentina, because with her guidance, we could better tailor the event-based downscaling to the events and the workforce development, which is tailored to their needs, and we have better addressed the regional priorities and relevant processes. And third, we are able to provide the climate information for future adaptation through this aspect deliverable 3.3 with a representative catalog of extreme events at the convective permitting resolutions. The future climate information will be demonstrated through the comparison with the two scenarios. And this, as Simone said, this data set will be freely available on the aspect data archive. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Yushi. And thank you to all the speakers. So we're running a bit late, but we'll take a few questions. We have a question for Yushi. Whether you have run the experiment also restoring soil moisture to climatological values so as to be able to assess the role of soil moisture and feedbacks?
Yes. So actually for the event-based downscaling, the initialization of soil moisture is very important. So we actually have done a sensitivity test with different soil moisture initializations. And what I just mentioned, the soil moisture restoration development, is that we found that if we use the field capacity soil moisture as the initialization of our simulation, we can actually get better simulations that is closer to the observations. So we think there's maybe some biases in our models, which result to some overheatings over the region if we are using our soil moisture initial condition that is from the climatology. Yeah.
Thank you, Shi. And next, there's a question for Cinzia. So you already showed us some information on monitoring and some climate information that you produce. How do you make sure that this is applied in practice, that it reaches decision makers and that they can actually use it and trust this information within your region?
Thank you very much for your question. It's a very, very good question and a very good point indeed. And I think that we are trying to promote a shift from something reactive, as I mentioned before, for example, reactive emergency response, to something that is proactive and a long-term resilience. Okay, and using a sort of institutional mechanism. So when you update the regional adaptation strategy, for example, or the climate risk assessment into a mitigation plan, you try to join these documents and these strategies and plans, measures, and not to build separate documents and separate instructions, for example, for the regional government. And I think that another challenge, but something that is very important, is building with the stakeholders, building with the government, and in this case, you can you can try. You are not sure, but you can try to ensure that what you build is felt by all these people like their own process, and so they trust more and they are involved, and so they can apply the measures. They can really act as the plan advice. Okay, this, but we are not sure, but we are trying to build this process to do this.
Thank you, Cinzia. And then Simone, I would like to ask you about the importance of the information that Aspect is producing for the governance sector in general. Can it be applied to other contexts, other regions, and how important this information is for adaptation?
That's a really good question. As I said before, we have as a user the Emilia-Romagna ARPA that is really highly technical, and what we are really assessing is that this could be extended to also other regions. So that was the importance of the survey, so we can disseminate and we could understand how this kind of practices could be generalized or could be applied also in different kind of contexts. So I will say that, like, generally speaking, this kind of practice could be dependent on the user, on the region, and also on the type of the governance that are in place. From one side, the governance case study here in aspect really underline, like, really a significant player that is ARPA, which is like really highly technical, but sometimes, like, we acknowledge that some region maybe didn't have like the same level of operationalization in terms of like governance or decision making. So I will reiterate again, like, to fill in the survey. So in order to understand if this kind of case study could be reproducible and then scalable also to in different contexts.
Thank you, Simone. Does anyone have any other comments? Any final points? If not, then I would like to thank everyone and again remind you to fill in the survey that you can find in the chat. And thank you, speakers and those attending, and have a nice afternoon.